All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to thank you all for joining us. I know in COVID and also just it's kind of late today. Thank you for taking all the time to come out here and watch our screening with us. We deeply appreciate it. My name is Asta Thomas, and it is my pleasure to basically welcome you all to the inaugural showing of Wolfpack Pictures. So for those of you who don't know, although I think most of you do, it is our first year doing a film collective program. Oh gosh. I don't know why I'm nervous all of a sudden. Something about speaking in front of people. Normally I'm very chill, but I guess I'm just too excited about the project. But basically we are a film MA film collective run by the graduate students. And it is our pleasure to show you the film Wildness by Wu Sang. We are going to talk about it mostly in the context of cinematic spaces. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and announce our wonderful presenter, Dr. John Stadler. So if you want to go ahead and come on up here.
Thank you, Asta, and thank you everyone for showing up today. It's really great to be in meet space with other people, so I really appreciate everyone taking the effort to come out. As Asta mentioned, I am Dr. Stadler. I teach in the Film Studies program here at NC State. I want to take a moment just to thank all of the organizers who made this happen, which means a lot of the grad students will get name-checked now. So first of all, I want to thank the founding members of Wolfpack Pictures. This includes McKinley Keener, Julia Ray, Asta Thomas, and Kyle Miskell, who were integral in giving shape to this initiative, to this collective, to this film series. So thank each of you. I'd also like to thank our new members, which includes Allison Rose, Josh McCormick, Lindsay Reich, and Jessica Wadsack Stewart, who have further enriched our program. Furthermore, I need to give thanks and will to the Department of English and to Interdisciplinary Studies, both of whom graciously funded this whole series. So we could not have done that without them paying for the screening privileges so that we could make this not just an NCSU event, but also a public event. This is public, so going forward, if you have people outside of the NCSU community that you want to bring, please bring them here. They are welcome. Thanks to the faculty of film studies who have been ardent supporters of Wolfpack Pictures from its beginning. Thank you to all those people. Can I actually just force you all to give a little round of applause to all of these grad students? Thank you so much for everything you did. I'm super excited. And as you can see from our poster here, the schedule for the fall semester is set. Today we're doing Wildness. And on September 30th, Allison Rose, who is with us today, will be presenting the film Night on Earth. And on October 28th, Dr. Josie Torres-Barth, who's right there, will be presenting Carnival of Souls. So we have the whole schedule for the fall set. We will be giving the schedule for the spring imminently, so that is also something to be looking forward to. Okay. Oh, and I need to show you, just because I think it's beautiful, and McKinley did a great job. This is the poster for our next film. So thank you, McKinley, our artist in residence. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the film. This is going to be very casual. I did not have a lot of time this week to prepare something really flowery and beautiful, so this will be off the cuff, as we say. Today's film is Wildness. This is by the director Wu Sang, who is a transgender biracial filmmaker who, at the time of making this, she was positioned in Los Angeles. She since then, in 2018, won a MacArthur Genius Award and has been doing work in Europe recently. So it's a very exciting filmmaker who comes to the filmmaking practice actually from the role of an activist and a community organizer. And in fact, prior to making this film, she had never made a film before. So this is her first film. And she really wants to bring these two fields, or these two disciplines rather, together. So one of the things I'm going to encourage us to think about is how activism and community organizing melds with or confronts the act of filmmaking here. Hybridity, as we will see from this film, and bringing together of disparate spaces and peoples is a high concern of Wu Sang's. So another kind of hybridity that we see within this film is that between documentary filmmaking and fiction filmmaking. So I would also encourage people to pay attention to what really resonates as a capturing of reality and what looks more like fabulation and creation and creativity here. Wu Sang is drawing heavily from the magical realism tradition, the literary tradition. So one of the most obvious ways that this will manifest in the film is in the animation of the space that we are in. So the space that this film takes place in is primarily a queer Latino bar called the Silver Platter, which is in Los Angeles. And one of the more interesting choices that Sang does within this film is to have the bar itself speak. All right, so the bar itself becomes a character within this film and really challenges a lot of our preconceived notions of what a space is and what a space can be within cinema. I think one of the traditions that this film calls to mind for me is the Italian neo-realism tradition. So for people who are maybe unfamiliar with this is the moment directly following World War II when filmmakers in Italy were noticing that because so much of their country and so many of their studios had been decimated by the war, that they could no longer make films in the traditional sense that they had before that in a kind of studio system. And so what they started to do at that point was to make films on the street, on location, in quote-unquote real places, utilizing quote-unquote real people, having extras, people around Rome just in the film, and in fact casting some of their main characters as non-actors. So really starting to trouble the idea of what actually constitutes a fiction film by bringing the real into it. So here's a film that I would say starts as documentary and brings the fiction into it. So it's sort of operating from a different vantage point, but both of them are bringing these two traditions together. Another thing that I would like us to think about is the idea of a contact space. So I'm thinking to the author Samuel Delany, who's a queer science fiction author, who, in addition to writing really masterful science fiction, has also written a bunch of cultural theory. So he has a book called Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, which is a book all about the demise of Times Square in the 1980s and 1990s. So anyone who's been to Times Square in the last 20 years knows that Times Square is a little bit like walking around a sort of Disneyland. You have just like these huge billboards, you have lights everywhere, you have Broadway, you have just endless attractions that you can go to. And that's in part because Mayor Giuliani and other mayors before him decided that they needed to clean up Times Square, because in the 80s and even the early 90s and before then, Times Square was where all of the porn theaters in New York resided, all right? So in this book, Times Square Blue, Times Square Red, Delany has this really fascinating observation, which is that when the city was cleaning up, quote unquote cleaning up, I should say, Times Square, the argument was that it was not safe. It was not a safe space for people. In fact, it was a dangerous space. And sort of counterintuitively, Delany argues that actually these pornographic theaters are a space of contact. And he really presses on this term a lot to sort of bring out its robustness by saying what he means by that is people of all walks of life were going to the porn theaters. You had doctors, you had, construction workers. You had people of all different socioeconomic classes, people of all different ethnicities, all different nationalities, coming into this space and coming into contact with one another. And it's a really counterintuitive argument to make. He gives a really, I think, beautiful example of what a moment of contact is, which is just you're in the grocery store and you're waiting in line with your food, and the person in front of you has purchased, let's just say, some bubble gum that you enjoy, and you just strike up a conversation with them. That, he says, is a moment of contact. And really what we as a society need is to have more contact between people who are typically delineated by space into different areas, whether that's a neighborhood, whether that's a socioeconomic division, whether that's an ideological division, spaces where people who can bridge difference through contact, that is, he says, on the whole, productive of a kind of social good. And so it's a very interesting argument, and it's one that I want to think about. How does contact work within different kinds of space? So the film here that Wu Sang directed is not just about a bar, but it's about who are the people who frequent the bar. So the bar started, and it's the oldest bar in, oh gosh, I'm going to forget. Do I have anyone from LA in the room? Echo Park, where's that? Does anyone know? Anyway, it's near Echo Park in LA, and I'm blanking for whatever reason on the name of that neighborhood, but it's the oldest gay bar in that neighborhood. And it really started as a gay bar to Latino men. But over time, the space started to increasingly cater to trans Latina women. All right, so even the space itself before Wu Sang arrived was a space in flux in terms of what its patronage was, who it was for, and who felt safe within that space. And so safe spaces is one of the things that I'll want to think about. What constitutes a safe space, and when does the sort of grammar of that space shift and allow, for instance, a kind of safeness to bridge between both gay and transgender people? So Wu Sang enters the picture in 2008 through 2010. And this is a time and period where Wu Sang brings a party to this bar. And largely that party is frequented by Sang's queer artist friends who are all a bunch of 20-something-year-olds. All right, into a bar that is historically a Latinx bar, right? And there's tension that starts to arise between these two communities, and that's what this film is all about, is about what happens when different communities occupy the same space. Can they bridge divides or create safety amongst one another? And I think that's probably as good a spot as any to end. Oh, I have one last note that I wrote. Mention the spiritual cousin to this film as Paris is Burning. So if anyone's seen Jenny Livingston's documentary from 1991, Paris is Burning, that is a documentary all about the drag ball scene in the 80s and 90s in Harlem. And it, too, is very much interested in the relationship between queer and transgender people, although it mostly focuses on drag, and this film is not really that much about drag. So there's a kind of sort of relationship between the two films, but they are doing different things. So having said that, how tonight's programming will operate is that I will shut up. I was going to show you this little clip, but I think I've already talked long enough. That is Wu Sang. We will see more of her in the film. After the film, which is very short, I think it's an hour and 20 minutes, or no, an hour and 10 minutes, or 13, we will have time to discuss. Now, we initially build this as a Q&A, but I really don't want to present here as though I am the expert on Wu Sang's film. I would much rather have me be a go-between for you to have conversations with one another about this film and to really think about what does this film allow us to think about space. So having said that, thank you all. I'm going to turn off the recording of Panopto and we will get started.